The Money Show with Bruce Whitfield is brought to you by ABSA, sponsor of The Gathering Earth Edition. Register to join at dailymaverick.co.za. ABSA is a registered FSP.
The Money Show.
Investment School.
Have you been caught out in an investment scam? And it really is nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, you get an email, you get a tip at a party, at a braai, somebody phones you and says, hey, listen, I've got this really cool idea. And all you got to do is give me a couple of $1,000 and we'll see how it goes. And you hand over some money and you get a call a month later and they say to you, you know what? It's gone up 20%. It's done better than I thought it would. How about you give me some more money? Because I've got a really good sense on this. We've been doing our work on this, and they're incredibly convincing. They are incredibly engaging. They're very warm. They're also very good at what they do. And they are a little bit like a trout fisherman standing in a mountain stream. And they cast their fly upon the waters, and they tickle and tantalize and wait for you, as the trout in this particular case, to come out and have a bite. They flick the fly away, and you're so frustrated that you've missed out. That when they cast the fly on the waters again, you pounce because you want to get onto a good thing. And so often it's because you have a friend who has put money into an investment. I recall, this is going back a long time. Sure Cell was one of the companies. I forget all of the details of it, but it was a very nice man called Gary Porritt, terribly convincing. And he ran an investment scam for which he has not yet been found guilty, an alleged investment scam in which lots of people lost money. And it was called Tygon, the whole Tygon investment scam. And he had made complicit a once respected journalist who would promote the investments scheme. And all it was a round-tripping of listed company shares from one vehicle to another. They, in those days, didn't have to disclose the components of the investments, and people kept getting great returns. But it turns out to be a Ponzi scheme. Now, let's talk about Ponzi schemes, because this is the focus, I think, of our discussion this evening. Nicole van Munckhof, who is a certified financial planner at Independent Securities. Most investment schemes are styled on Charles Ponzi's great scheme of probably 100 years ago now, of convincing people to put money into something that doesn't really have an underlying investment proposition, right?
Correct, Bruce. And often those types of schemes, you're taking money from Peter to essentially pay a little bit out to Paul and living off of the rest, basically. That's essentially what happens. And we've seen a number of those come through, since the creation of them by Mr. Ponzi back in the 1920s. And just recently in Johannesburg, we've seen another one come out in the news, allegedly. So again...
No, there was a big story on Carte Blanche.
Yes.
They can say allegedly. Tell me what Carte Blanche said.
So Carte Blanche basically said that, this gentleman...
can we refrain from the use of the word gentleman?
Yes, this chap. So his name was Michael David Ash. He targeted members of the Jewish community. So he himself was a Jewish gentleman. Sorry about the word gentleman. His son was actually involved with the community, and if I recall, he was a rabbi, so quite trusted in the community. And essentially, what happened was he convinced people. He was an accountant or did people's books for them or their taxes, or I'm not really sure of those details, but he was involved with the bookkeeping with people. And he convinced them to invest money with him, and it was completely fake. And again, taking money from Peter to pay Paul, essentially. It all came to light, and he's pretty much been accused of scamming folks out of around 60 million rand, which is quite a number.
It's a significant amount of money, and I cast my mind back, and I can't remember the scheme again now, and the guys who were involved in it. Tannenbaum. Barry Tannenbaum was also a Jewish guy who his family had a strong legacy in financial markets and in business in South Africa. And Barry Tannenbaum went around contacting daddy's friends and colleagues. And, you Harold's son. Okay, no problem, Barry. Of course, he has 10 million. He has 20 million. Many millions. And this is the most embarrassing thing to happen in Joburg in the last 15 years. But again, mostly Jewish business leaders, and many others as well, who were given this top opportunity to invest in the components that made antiretroviral drugs. Except Barry Tannenbaum didn't have a supply of the components for antiretroviral drugs. I don't know what happened to the money. The last time I heard Barry was driving an Uber somewhere in Australia. Goodness knows where he's gone. He's disappeared off the face of the earth, and probably wisely so. But he took really smart, really well-connected, really astute business leaders, CEOs of companies, chairmen of companies, directors of boards, people you would think would be wiser than this, and duped them. This can happen to anybody.
Yes, and I mean, if we look at what happened in America with Bernie Madoff, I mean, that was years and years, that was decades.
I couldn't even watch the documentary. It was too awful. But the good documentary on Netflix.
Yes, great documentary on Netflix, and you know, very telling, but amazing, and the kind of, you know, the tricks he used to convince people and to keep people kind of invested were very clever. A lot of the, I almost want to say, smaller guys who don't have exposure necessarily to the financial sector, you know, don't do it as smartly, but he was definitely one of the smartest ones in terms of how and the lengths he went to kind of convince people and to pull the wool over their eyes, so to
And the
speak.
most powerful mechanism, the most wonderful advertising any one of these guys can hope for is word of mouth.
Yes, definitely. It's always your strongest.
Who's this fellow that you're talking about now?
His name was Michael David Ash.
Okay, Michael David Ash. If you are an accounting client of Michael David Ash, and I don't know you, Michael, so feel free to give us a call and defend yourself. I'm up for it. But if you're an accounting client and Michael's gets you a little bit of a SARS refund every year, and you never get audited, and he's obviously very good at his job, and then he says, you know what? Let's do some investments because I'm diversifying, I'm expanding, and I know this stuff. And I know that you're a bit apprehensive about it because you're very good at your job and investments aren't really your thing. Why don't we take a little bit of this money that you've worked so hard for and we just put it into an investment? And you go, oh, Michael David Ash, my hero, thank you so much for looking after me and my interests. Except, allegedly, he may not have had the integrity that you would require of an investment advisor because he wasn't one.
Yeah, or the best interest of his clients.
Absolutely not.
Yes.
And so, unfortunately, what so often happens, so we can laugh and giggle a bit about the Barry Tannenbaum scheme because people lost 10 and 20 million rand who would be more agitated from an ego perspective than bankrupted from a financial perspective. So many of the people who get taken by the sorts of people, the sorts of schemes that Mr. Ash is accused of perpetrating here are people who can't afford to lose money. They are people who are actually looking for hope in an environment where they don't have their own ideas, or they may be a little bit greedy and trusting.
Yeah, and unfortunately what we do find is that it is definitely your more vulnerable members of society who are more susceptible. So, you know, older people who maybe are not as tech savvy to know what to do necessarily. And that's really one of the things that we find often. You know, it's kind of the golden thread throughout these things. They are more sophisticated. I think with crypto we've seen a lot of other schemes come forward, you know, be it like we saw with the likes of OneCoin being a fake coin that didn't exist, and it was pretty much just a multi-layered marketing strategy that they followed and duped people out of money in that instance, or where we saw with FTX where it was, you know, the exchange was actually there was fraud happening and it was vulnerable to fraud essentially.
And all of these things, you go in good faith and lose your money, and there's no recourse. Because even if the bad guy is caught, prosecuted, and jailed, the odds of ever finding that money are, I've never seen money sort of return to investors from one of these schemes because the money gets frittered away.
Yeah, so interestingly enough, with the Madoff one, there was some funds that were recovered and
That's
so
in
on.
the United States.
Exactly,
yeah.
yes. But locally, yeah, we haven't seen much recourse generally, or people being reimbursed or put into the same position before, because ultimately that money is lost. You know, other global schemes, we've actually seen people disappear and flee and non-tradition countries, etc. So
because the basis of a Ponzi scheme is money in, money out. And as long as there's more money coming in than money going out, the scheme continues and grows. But at some point, there's a tipping point where the outflows exceed the inflows.
Yes.
And that's where it all goes pear-shaped, right?
Yes, or where the lifestyle of the people running the schemes becomes too lavish and they just can't keep up with it, basically.
Yeah. So what are the telltale signs here? Because it's all well and good for us to sit here and hypothesize and theorize and tell war stories and make people lose sleep tonight. But when it comes down to it and we are approached by our accountant who says, I have an idea. A trusted person, a cousin, a friend, somebody in our social circle, somebody at the golf club, somebody at the tennis club, somebody playing padel. Because all those guys that will hang out at padel now, that's the best place to hang out. And they come to us and say, this guy is, this investment is a sure thing.
Okay, so I think there are two sides to this. So the one is there are a few risk factors to look out for, red flags, when actually analyzing the type of investment. And then there are a few things that the investor or potential investor can do to ensure, and make sure that the product or the investment is ultimately legit. So I think let's start with the red flags, if we can. Generally, Bruce, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So markets are volatile. We've seen during 2022, average markets were down globally around 20%. For 2023, the JSE All Share Index year to date is up 5.5%, and the 1 year return is 12.9%. So we're seeing a lot of volatility within markets. So when you look at the investment returns promised by these kinds of investments, what you really want to be wary of is consistent above average returns that are reported, or a guaranteed return. Now, I'm not saying that a guaranteed return or above, and on average above average return is bad, but usually the people running those investments have very good reasons and strategies and can explain to you what their strategy is and justify how they achieve those returns. So that's really the first one.
The vast majority of people, unfortunately, who get caught out by these schemes are not always equipped to have that conversation, because a good con artist can construct a story off a script and be particularly, they're called con artists because they what do we, I think the origins of it, convincing, probably from
confidence man.
Confidence man.
Confidence man.
You have confidence in them, confidence tricksters.
Yes.
These are people that you trust and they build trust.
Yes.
They're abusers like any other abusers. So often you hear these stories of people getting caught up in all kinds of terrible things. It's because they've been sucked into a relationship with somebody, and they're very patient. And they sort of like, okay, if you don't want it today, look, I'll come back next week. And in the meantime, somebody phones you and goes, have you heard?
Yeah.
And you come back a week later and say, if only you'd bought them. Look what's happened.
Yeah. Isn't that always the old adage, if only? But
they give you FOMO.
Yes, exactly. And that's the very next point, is that there's patience, but there's always the sense of urgency, the sense of rush, the sense of you're going to miss out. And we always say it's not timing the market, it's time in the market, all those kinds of things. And that's very important. So, okay, you might miss an opportunity if you don't invest now. But if there's that constant pounding of this FOMO, this creating the sense of, I'm going to lose out. Everyone, rabbit in hair.
Everyone else always gets the
Yes.
lucky breaks. I never get a lucky break. I am due a lucky break. I am worth it. And you hand over your money.
Yes.
And poof,
Yes.
it's gone. But look, there's no guarantee in the regulated environment on any investment. There's no guarantee on any investment. There's no guarantee on cash in the bank. If the bank goes bust and government doesn't stand behind deposits and doesn't guarantee those deposits, VBS Mutual Bank, for example, was lightly regulated and was robbed from the inside. And we're still yet to see proper prosecutions on that. Exactly. And I wonder where that is, actually. Producers, Eyewitness News, get them onto it. Because we stop asking these questions. Where the hell are the prosecutions on these things? Because municipalities were putting money into VBS Mutual Bank, even though they were prevented from regulators from doing so. People broke rules. And it was all part of a massively convoluted scheme, which has been unpicked by the curator. And has been explained by the curator, and the money has been followed, and we understand much of it went into politicians and entities connected to politicians and all of that sort of stuff. So there is, investment comes with risk. It doesn't mean you should not invest, but how do we then differentiate between what is a legitimate investment that is covered by at least a degree of regulation, that it provides us with sufficient protection to take the risk of, because there are multiple levels of risk here, to put money into an investment.
Yeah, and I think what you're saying is very important, Bruce, because I think what's important to understand is that there's always the trade-off between risk and return, and that's never going to go away. So if you kind of want a good return, you're going to have to take more risk. But maybe to answer your question is, in terms of what people can do, is I think research and then also connecting with regulators is important. So we've got a very well-regulated financial services sector in South Africa. And on those regulatory websites, so the first one of those is the Financial Sector Conduct Authority. And they pretty much are responsible for approving every single fund that gets listed.
But I mean, I haven't seen a statement from them in a while, but there was a time where on a Monday morning you get a statement saying this person is barred from doing, this person is barred, this person is barred. There's a huge pressure on the regulators,
Yes.
of course, with lots of applications from institutions and people to set themselves up. Again, it's not a perfect process.
No. And interestingly enough, if you actually go onto their website, you can still find those reports. They give reports where a lot of what's been coming out lately is people impersonating, legitimate entities. And that's where these websites are quite important, because if you go to the FSC website, you can search an entity. Under that entity, you can see what they're authorized, what kind of advice they can give, what kind of services they can deliver, and ultimately you can find the people who are authorized to act on behalf of those entities. So that's quite a useful tool, and I don't think a lot of people necessarily know that even exists. Similarly, you can find every regulated FSCA fund both locally and globally. So any fund that the FSCA has put their stamp on approval on and said, we're safe, or this is safe, we back this.
We trust the people who have applied for the license to do the job they say they're going to do.
Exactly.
That doesn't guarantee you a return.
No.
Nothing is guaranteed ever, unless you pay a high fee for a guaranteed product but that comes with all kinds of other shackles.
Yes.
When it comes to guaranteed returns. The world of investments for many people is terrifying, and that's why so often if you're feeling greedy when somebody brings a proposition to you, if it makes you go, ooh, that's exciting. Be careful. And buyer beware, because unfortunately, once that money is gone, it is gone.
Yes.
And it is. I recall waking up one morning and my car wasn't where I parked it. And it was an old car, and it was, good luck to the guys who stole it. I hope they crashed and burned. But did I say that out loud? But it was just that horrible feeling of knowing that something that is yours is gone in an instant, and there's nothing you can do about it.
And it's almost that disbelief of that I park somewhere else kind of thing.
Yes.
And I think it's very much the same with these kinds of, when you lose money on an investment or a scam, essentially, is you kind of, it's disbelief for a while. But ultimately, when looking at investments, and a few other things you can do is, try and understand what you're ultimately investing in. I think that's very important. If you don't understand the underlying investment, if you don't understand the strategy, or if they're not providing you with a clear strategy, those are both, two very big red flags, I almost want to say, because ultimately they need to be able to tell you what their strategy is, what are they doing, where are they investing, how are they investing, and you need to then accept and evaluate, is that a strategy, one that you believe in, can follow, understand? If it's not something that you necessarily understand, then maybe it's not the right investment for you.
And if everybody else is doing it and you're feeling as if you're missing out, stay away.
Yeah.
Because it's just there are lots of these
Yes.
warnings. When it comes then to the world of the boring world of unit trusts and exchange traded funds, I mean, again, these are products and services that have stood the test of time in terms of integrity and in terms of professional management and in terms of tracking what is happening in the real world. Keep it simple, I would think.
Yes, definitely. I think the simpler you can keep it, and the more it's within your comfort zone, almost want to say, the better it is. You know, when you're working with your hard-earned money, I don't know, it's not the time for me to step out of your comfort zone. Stick to kind of what you know, what you're comfortable with, and things that have a proven track record over time. Go with regulated investments, go with regulated stocks and products, and you kind of stay. And there's nothing wrong with taking a little bit of risk, but be selective.
I just recall Craig Gradich, who is with Gradich Mahura Investments. I mean, just the best line ever on this feature. You've done very well, by the way, but the best line ever on this feature was, and it was at a time where crypto was doing crazy flick-flack things. And he said, yeah, no, you just do this and you do this and you're conservative and anything. I said, what about crypto? He says, well, if you want a little bit of violence in your portfolio, put 1% into crypto.
Yeah.
Again, every time crypto goes up, I'm told I'm an idiot. Every time crypto goes down, the criticism disappears. But it's just, the volatility of these things and the uncertainty that is brought by stuff that we don't understand, we can't fully compute, and we can't say, what is it? Crypto doesn't make a widget. It doesn't. There isn't a block of gold. There isn't a little piece of silver. There isn't a stone, a shiny stone underneath it. I don't understand. Yeah. So I stay away. Yeah. Many others will make big fortunes. Yeah. And many more will lose big fortunes.
My philosophy on that is, if you're willing to gamble with that money, go ahead. If you're going to take it to a casino or buy, an asset like crypto, then that's your prerogative. Go ahead and do it. But I do agree with your sentiment. And there I think what's important is, if you like crypto and you believe in blockchain technology.
Blockchain technology is one thing.
Exactly.
It's a super highway of fast moving data.
Exactly.
Get that?
Yes.
Not the bloomin'.
Yes. There are lots of
ETFs
available that can track those, track the technology, track the smarts behind it. Don't track the fad.
What a good piece of guidance this evening. Thank you very much to our guest tonight, Nicole von Munckhof, who is a certified financial planner at Independent Securities. Welcome back, George.